Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the #1 AI engineering podcast in Europe called This Is the Year. Hopefully, guys, this time you don't disagree with me. we are
I think it is
becoming
the
the
number one,
#1.
yeah.
We are
You're
becoming the
missing-
#1.
You're missing information, man. It's
Which
not only
one?
in Europe, we're already reaching other countries.
That's true. So Brazil, we targeted last week. So just for the audience, before we get into today's video, on this channel, we generally talk about all things AI engineering. And in today's video in particular, we are deconstructing model context protocol tools. And just for if you're completely new to the context of MCP or model context protocol, I think, Benna, you have a pretty good analogy prepared with a USB stick. So feel free to shoot. And then we start with the introduction once again before we get into the content.
You're already putting me on the spot. Very usual from you, Cyril. So basically, this was analogy. I was reading the MCP protocol page. We can link it here to modelcontextprotocol.io. So basically, they say, and I really like this analogy. Think of MCP like a USB-C port for AI applications. So basically, MCP provides a standard way to connect AI models to different data sources and tools. For me, this is an amazing analogy, and luckily we didn't have Apple to fight it against it because it's already open, widely available, and everyone is using it. Who isn't wants to use it.
So for everybody in the audience, definitely a great tool and a great stack in the chain of AI before Apple actually was able to close the lid. So yeah, let me continue quickly with the intro for all the new listeners. Today with me are two AI experts, engineering experts. We have the AI magician. He just perfectly introduced a great analogy to MCP. Bene, you're back from Brazil. And then let me quickly give the word to the second AI wizard, building Python code and doing a lot of the AI engineering in the back end as well. João, how is life?
Life's good. So I think we've been going over like a lot of MCP servers and seeing a lot of them pop out as really useful tools. There's a lot of official ones coming from the platforms themselves. There's quite a few being built and created by people like me and Bene and a lot of other developers around the world. So you can give your AI, your personal AI, so whatever you want to use, Gemini, Claude, or ChatGPT, access to a platform of your choosing. And you're not limited to one, you can have as many platforms. But we're going to go over that pretty soon. I'll pass the word on to you, Cyril.
Yeah, sure.
Introduce us to the topic.
Just to set the stage. So I think 1 year ago, we were mostly on the notion of one LLM is just giving back maybe a response in text. Now, fast forward to 2025, we're approaching half of 2025 already. Now we're more entering into the realm of deep research agents and deep automation agents that are not only receiving a prompt and just giving back a response, but they're actually also understanding what the user deeply really wants, and then maybe executing a chain of different, let's say, actions in an iterative way, calling different tools or different MCP servers, as we will see in this episode. And that kind of gives a bit the notion of like a professional would be handling a particular task or a scientific researcher would be handling a particular task and then bring it back to the client, aka the user of the AI. So there could be, for example, offline retrievals in databases. That was fairly common in before software engineering world already, but now online retrieval, for example, and or external tools. So in today's video, really these MCP server are these external tools that the AI or the large language models can call iteratively and combine different ones of them. And again, do either automated actions or retrieve information or basically a combination of both. So gentlemen, let's maybe high level, just quickly define what MCP is. I think, Benna, you already started with a perfect example on the USB stick. Maybe, João, just in your own words, and then maybe I can also add a bit of nuance to that. What's MCP once again for the audience, and then we head off to the examples.
A very standardized way of giving these models access or the ability to use your programs, to use your software that you use day to day. So you don't have to open the browser and log in and click through things. Your AI could also be doing that for you. Of course, it can use the mouse and can use the keyboard, although that takes a long time, but it can interact with the platforms directly, and it can skip you, and maybe you're just interacting with your AI, and you don't even have to open your computer, because we're moving forward to that. Maybe that future where the devices don't have a screen or we have some devices without a screen, that you can just interact and read your email, read your texts, send some things, get some data online, and you don't even have to look at the screen. Maybe we can fix humanity's attention span with that. Maybe.
I think maybe in my other words, it's like a middle layer between the large language model or the intelligence and like the actual execution of a particular tool and or a database. So I think Benna, you brought that up in our private conversation before the podcast. So it's like a bit acting as is like middle layer, middleware basically. And it also adds a nuance of security to it. So it's basically acting a little bit as an intermediary or a secure boundary between all the intelligence that you're maybe running, be it, for example, in your SaaS or in your corporate context, and the actual, let's say, sometimes a bit sensitive tooling or data that you have in your company. So it's this like middle layer. It's standardized, which is great. So you don't have to always change whenever you want to engineer something. So you more or less know the structure and the format. And this really helps to maybe accelerate the build-up. Did I miss anything, Bene or Joao, just on the high-level context?
No,
Just
I think
to
you captured
add-
pretty well.
yeah.
But go ahead,
The-
Benny. Go add something.
No, just to add a bit more information. I did research beforehand. I was kind of using, and now you have way more information. The documentation is way prettier, way easier to look at it. And to sum up, basically you have a host. The host is actually the application that's using the MCP, where the MCP client is. You have the server where the MCP server is inserted, and then you have these two layers, and you have an extra layer, which is the transportation layer, the communication that it happens. Just to get a quick overview, normally on an MCP you have the resources, so it's basically for you to showcase what capabilities your MCP server has, and you have tools, and then you can have extra things within the MCP server, like prompts, sampling, and these are things. So basically, create reusable prompts for different workflows, and sampling is basically allowing your server to request computations from LLM. So basically, allowing the server to consume a bit the client. That's what I wanted to add.
The notion that there is at the same time multiple MCP server is certainly something that it then happens to be this iterative workflow. So one particular agent with MCP can interact with a multitude of these different, let's say, tools via the standardized and structured way Bene was quickly mentioning. Maybe I can put that also on the screen here. Just very high level, these are the general components. But then the actual use case and the usability really comes down to which of these MCP servers that you want to set up for your business or for your SaaS. So this is really what we are probably in the next few minutes really wanting to go deep dive. There is many of them out there. It also has, let's say, for example, on a high level, there is the distinction between the official MCP servers coming from the actual companies. So, for example, AWS has one, Azure has one, Meta has one. The tech companies have a particular proprietary one, but there's also a vast array of to be developed, probably open source or private ones. They have their own individual agreements and maybe API or just general usage tied to that. But that's really the distinction. So this is what you as a builder can basically go and check which one makes the most sense for your particular use case. Maybe in the future also each company will have one. So if you're a booking company, an airline provider, or you name it, maybe a bank, and then the external agents for many other companies can basically dock to that MCP server. But that's a little bit maybe futuristic for the future. That's where we could be heading. Not yet in today's overview. Maybe in 2026 we can do. Yeah, Ben, shoot.
I want to. So basically, I was looking a bit, and there's something that you already have, for instance, on GitHub Copilot. So integrating with VS Code, for instance. You actually already have, it's already allowed. So it's kind of a MCP client already. You can go there, install that extension, and then configure MCP server of tools for you to use with your GitHub Copilot. So basically, this is already happening. We are already in the future. We're already this is the year.
The technical capabilities is here, and now it's just a matter of time when these companies are basically endpointing or making the endpoints available in terms of their MCP server to the public for us to consume. In other words, gentlemen, which one? If we really go into the details now that I think we wrapped up the context, it's a tool chain AI can use, and iteratively deploy and interact with different ones, which ones are the ones shooting this episode in mid 2025 that we would believe they're actually the ones that are the good ones? Not say that the other hundreds, if not thousands of MCPs are not, but which one would we select and maybe why? Joao, do you want to kick off your 1-2 first favorites and then Bene and then myself at the end?
Yeah, I think one of the platforms that I like the most is Reddit for social platforms, because it has that one thing where most of the things you do are public. So if a person comments on your post, you can see what that person has been commenting on, what that person has been posting, and you get an idea of what the profile that you're interacting with, which makes it a bit harder to create bots and avoid that idea that like the dead internet theorem where most of the content online is Gen AI already. And so there is a tool like a Reddit MCP server, which basically if you install it and add it to your personal AI, it could let you ask something like, hey, what's hot right now on, let's say, technology, and your AI, let's say Claude, because for Anthropic, Claude has a client you can install on your computer, basically ChatGPT, but without having to open the browser. And you can add those MCP servers, all the MCP servers we talked about, you can probably try to find a way to add to that Claude client. And basically you can open Claude and say what's going on technology. And Claude could go online, could go to Reddit and search the main technology subreddits and see what are the hot threads that are going on, what are the people posting and commenting on. And so for a personal use case, I think it skips some screen time for you. But also for a business use case, imagine you had a product, you could very easily set up a project where it goes on Reddit or it goes on other platforms. There's also MCP servers for X and probably a lot for Meta and Instagram. And if not official, then some community-based ones. And it could go online to those platforms and see if your product is being mentioned, what's the sentiment like. So you could very easily get a feeling on how your product is doing and what people are thinking about. And your AI could not only read those, but could summarize and get an idea of what's going on and present that to you on a daily, weekly, monthly basis, according to what you want.
I mean, it depends a little bit on the capabilities of the MCP servers, the way you set them up. I think, Joao, you perfectly mentioned it could be an open community version or issued by the company itself. In that case, probably Meta for the name of Instagram. I think the future, there's certainly a directionality in terms of, let's say, tailored advertisement. So if you're a company, you don't want to only shoot one particular ad and distribute it across your entire target audience. You probably would want, and this might be happening, for example, with a company like AppLovin, again, put it on the screen here. They do something similar in the future, if not now already, which each and every single user will receive an AI created, but also targeted advertising for this particular persona. And maybe MCP servers as a middle layer can somewhat act on that. So there you might have an agent, like a marketing agent, interacting with an MCP server, reading all the nuance of your target audience in the live feed, basically. And there might be a generational agent, which is able to basically maybe with leveraging ChatGPT, create on the fly these targeted advertisements. So this is maybe a bit of a futuristic future, but it's certainly, I think, with, again, companies like AppLovin or Meta itself going into this direction. MCP might be a bit of the middle layer, if not provided by these two companies already, that enable you to read the sentiment of your audience and then create with AI basically the images and the advertisements. Joe, any other ones from your perspective to add here?
Yeah, so this one applied to both personal and business use cases, but imagine a more business use case where you're building an AI agent and you wanted to analyze your data, you wanted to give you reports on how your company is doing. So a good one to use would be maybe Tavily, which is a company, and this is an official one from the Tavily company. They had in the past an API that you can use to search things. So basically Google search, but through an API. And now that they also presented that over MCP, so you can add it to your client, and your client can, in this case your AI, can easily call it and search online for things. So basically what ChatGPT and Gemini do when you add that web toggle, so you can go online and check for things and give you links to go places. And you can have that capability also from your model. So you don't have to think about all the integrations on how you're going to present results from Google or another search engine. They're going to do it for you. Another layer that you could use, if you don't want to take care of the reasoning or to teach your bot how it should search online, you could also use Perplexity. So Perplexity AI has been, I think, a competitor. ChatGPT and Claude, like they have their own AI that you can call and you can ask things, but they also have an MCP server. So your AI could easily ask things, hey, how is NVIDIA doing for the past 3 months? And Perplexity AI will search that for you. Like you'll go online, you'll do a report, basically like a human had asked it to, and it'll give your report directly to your AI. So AI can read the report made by Perplexity and know how NVIDIA is doing. So that's another layer that takes care of the whole research for you. Instead of a simple web search, you get more out of the data, and could really help if you want to, let's say, name your products in the market or know what's going on in the world in a very quick way.
I think it's these are definitely I think some value added MCPs. Bennett, do you want to go with the next ones, or should I shoot mine? How many do you have? How many do you have?
I think Benny, you're on mute.
Bennett is muted.
Yeah, so basically from my side, I can mention it's kind of related to what João said. So to enhance the product, and then the other two are more, I can go after you, Cyril. So basically all of the MCP servers that I'm going to present are official actually. So these two is MCP servers for vectorial databases. I've used both of them at the start of my Gen AI journey. That's why I saw them and I thought about bringing them. It's the MCP from Milvus and from Chroma DB. Both of them were actually quite big players when this Gen AI and RAG started, and they were either lightweighted or they could actually lightweight this for ChromaDB, and they could support thousands and millions of vectors and be efficient about it. And this is Milvus. So having an MCP server for these vectorial databases simplifies and allows and makes our database prepared to be connected to any project that wants to do RAG, and it's fast, easy to connect through MCP server. And the more you get into AI, it's just better to have your DB ready on an MCP server with vectorial stuff, because everyone in 1, 2, 3, 5 or to 5 years is going to be consuming that. And if you don't have that prepared, you're not going to be there anymore.
Maybe just maybe for some audience members that are not yet in the maybe super technical depth, vector storage and maybe RAG. Should we quickly clarify these two notions?
So basically, RAG is a way to search for information on a different way, not by word, but finding things by similarity. And vectorial databases are storing that information not with text, but with points within a X-dimensional space that points out the
A
similarity.
very common use case for RAG, for example, would be when you have those chat with your documents projects. I think even ChatGPT does it now, where you can upload a PDF and you can ask things about it. So the whole PDF is not being sent to ChatGPT every single time you ask, hey, so what's the summary of this, or what date was this written on? What it does usually, it breaks down that PDF into little bits. So it can be by paragraph, it can be by page. There's a lot of different ways to divide it. But according to your question, ChatGPT will search the PDF, and it'll only see a few of those pieces. So if the PDF was broken down into 100 pages, for example, and you can ask about, hey, what's the introduction, what's the context of this paper? The ChatGPT will look at the first few pages, so look at the first 5 to 10 pages, and it'll read the intro. If it's an academic paper, it'll read the intro, read the context of the paper, and tell it to you. You won't have to read the 100 pages in a single go. It's a way of optimizing this context windows, so they don't have to read the entire documents every single time. Because you could have one PDF, but you could also have hundreds or thousands of PDFs, or other documents.
and also enhancing the LLM with the information for the text or your company.
Yeah, so you could give it your own personal documents, your own company documents,
without having to
without
train
having
the
to
model
upload
and
them. Yeah.
everything. Yeah.
So it's a bit maybe in other words, even more high level, like it's just this vector storage is kind of speaking in the language of AI, kind of. So it's for artificial intelligence, like large language models, it's just the easiest way to retrieve or to get something from a database. Back in the day, it wasn't vector storage, so it wasn't numerical representations, for example, of a text or an image. It was stored in a different way. And with this vector storage, this is basically the best and ideal way of storing information to then be retrieved or get out of the database for an AI. So this is
Yeah,
basically
I mean,
what it is.
the quickest like one sentence explanation is vector databases are databases that AIs can use. Same way you
Yeah.
use Excel is AIs use vector databases.
I dislike that phrase, but at the same time, I can't disagree with it because AI, it's basically
It's too
numbers.
simple, but also
No, yeah, it's numbers, and the vectors are numbers, and so basically, it's put on computer language.
Exactly. Yeah, it's like in AI language, stored information to be best retrieved by it. You actually give me the perfect path, Joao, for my first MCP server, which would
Go
be
ahead.
the probably most boring one ever, but it's the Excel MCP server. But I just did the ballpark estimate of how many jobs in the world would be interacting with Excel, and it's countless. It's everything from an analyst to a consultant to basically a risk management worker in the banking area. So it's really
Programmer.
up to a programmer sometimes as well. So multiple millions of people, humans in this example, of course, are interacting with Excel. Excel MCP on very high level notion is just the agentized AI way of how the AI can interact and manipulate Excel files. For example, they can create and modify Excel work papers, read and write data into it, apply formatting style, basically every interaction a human could be doing, from generating sometimes a bit cumbersome pivot tables to managing the worksheets and so on and so forth. So this is really the high level, let's say, first step, I would say, to agentize or automate a lot of the human workflows. Because now the AI can interact with these files, it can consume it, but also it can manipulate it and maybe even draw conclusions from it. So if you're building anything from, for example, a SaaS or an internal tool using some sort of exposure to Excel, or you want to have some sort of, let's say, human mimicking interaction, certainly Excel MCP could be a great way to do that. You can also add a human in the loop because the human is used to basically reading Excel. So the AI agent might just create the Excel spreadsheet, do the first analysis, do the pivot and everything you tell it from a chat interface perspective. The agent, maybe with calling different tools, gathers all the data, puts it into an Excel, and then the output to the human, instead of, for example, a front end or just a display, for example, on a cockpit, might actually be the Excel spreadsheet. And you can just, of course, multiply that use case by 10x, and you might have different agents interacting with different parts of the Excel workbook. They're gathering all the data in one sheet, and then at the end, there's just like this human professional, once again, an analyst, a risk management person, a consultant, or an auditor actually just receiving the AI Excel output, basically. So to me, having worked probably north of thousands of hours on these Excels in my early life, 20 to like 27 or something, 20 to 25, so certainly 5 years, I was definitely exposed to many Excel spreadsheets. This was such a no-brainer that if you have a great agent and you give this agent the capability of doing Excel work, that could be a great
I was
way
actually
of
trying to
automating
think
certain things.
of all the companies out there, a company that doesn't use Excel. Because I've seen Excel being used like in bakeries to keep track of supply and ingredients. I've seen it being used by governments to keep track of like citizenships and like real classified data. I think Excel is being used mostly everywhere. It's a big monopoly for Microsoft. So if AI can use Excel, you can pretty much plug it in to any business. I'd be hard pressed to find a business not using Excel.
I mean,
One of the
certainly,
things-
yeah, but
Sorry, I wanted to say is if you don't have the video on, you should, because Cyril started by saying about his MCP server. the most boring thing ever. And if you see his face, how bright it was, the smile he had while explaining this, because honestly, like it's contagious because the 5 years he spent on this, and now this being able to be interacting with AI without anything. So basically showing AI to interact and to automate, to read and to create properly. This is such a revolution. Like I worked with document ingestion for a big part of my career as well. So I do know as well so much as João mentioned. There's so many parts of the business everywhere that uses Excel. And this is just a game changer. No one, probably it's not being used properly, but who tackles it first, it's going to win millions, honestly.
I mean, it's really then depending on the workflow. You are using the agent, but certainly just having the capabilities of great modify, read, and write into Excel. I definitely agree with you, Ben. A huge game changer. If you're more a startup company, I think they're mostly using Google Sheets. At least just my fellow, let's say, friends that are working in startups, as well as an employee, basically they are mostly on Google Sheets. Also happens to be having a MCP server. So Excel, basically the equivalent in the startup world, maybe more the Google stack. But in both areas, once again, these AIs can interact with the sheets basically and create them and modify them, and then the review can be done with a human professional in the loop. The second one, I think I can just double down and then back to you, Benny, on your favorite MCP servers, Atlassian MCP. Very similar notion. I spent years trying to make sense of Jira and Confluence. Yes, I somewhat would consider myself to be a little bit above the average, but still, it's still crazy how much of the time you have to search, classify, reclassify items. Something is missing in a story. There is a bug element that's not been described well, and all that end-to-end automated, non-automated human work can now be interacted with an AI. So with an Atlassian MCP server, you can, for example, consume all the updates on Jira, maybe from your other delivery teams that you're interacting with, or some other project teams even. You can have an AI-powered search, so the agent can go search particular things and retrieve them. You can do smart filtering. Of course, Jira and Confluence, they do have great capabilities, but having an agent layer on top of that might be great because you can fine-tune it the way you would like to want it to, and just content creation or management as well. So just one of the use cases I thought probably 6 months ago in that notion was you might have an agent that's doing all the project work. So it's not only a human now that's doing, like, for example, the project management work, but you actually have an agent that's collaborating with other agents on all the projects. And now with Atlassian MCP servers, you can now actually deploy all that knowledge and all this automation into the stack the humans are then again using. So it's very similar to Excel, kind of the idea that AI can now interact with the typical stack a human would use, but now they can actually go execute, retrieve data, and maybe again automate certain workflows and queries and dashboards and all that. So that's the second one. My face lit up a little bit less than Excel, but it's certainly something that I would also be definitely looking into, especially if you're somewhat building a SaaS that has some exposure to Jira or Influence. Certainly check out Atlassian MCP. Now to you, Bennett, your
I'm just I will
ones.
add mine. I'm just curious. In the Atlassian one, would you use it more for integration or more to understanding, like chat in the chat interface?
I mean, it's a good question. I think first, right? So there is a search bar in Jira that's, I mean, no offense to Atlassian on this side, but somewhat a bit insufficient to actually find and retrieve data, especially if you want to have dependency search. I just happen to somewhat fail to map certain stories and like different interrelated elements together. I think just an AI-powered search that has dependencies on it. Simple example, you might be working as an AI component, but somewhat the backend team in some other corner of the office is working on some completely related stuff and you don't even know. So maybe AI could make sense of these hidden fabrics that you're developing. So that's certainly something on the search components. But then integration, just as I said, yeah, you can actually have maybe the Scrum Master or the project manager be a complete AI agent and managing everything. But that's maybe a bit in the future.
Yeah, I have a few friends actually over at Cloudflare, and they have that. So basically, every day, instead of having those daily meetings that people meet at and they have to talk about for half an hour about what they're doing. Instead, they have no meeting whatsoever. They get a text message from a bot saying, "Hey, what are you up to today?" They'll answer, and then the bot will just get the answers from everyone on the team. We'll update the Jira board accordingly. And if anyone wants to know how the team is doing, you can ask things to the bot, and the bot will know and summarize the team's progress over the week. And so
Yeah.
a
Okay,
lot
that's
of this very cumbersome meetings that people used to have now can be skipped altogether. Because replying to a message, I can promise you, is certainly a lot faster than entering a meeting and talking about your day.
Yeah. I mean,
that's
that's
crazy. Like integrating that, for instance, with GitLab, and the person
exactly.
knows way more. The chat will hold more information faster than any human would.
Yeah, because usually it's not that the human can't, it's just most of the time any human doesn't have exposure to all these knowledge points. As I mentioned before, you might have completely dispersed product teams and they just don't have any single source of truth. But now, yeah, maybe you have an AI in the background, like you mentioned, Joao, in Cloudflare's case, that actually does a little bit of the orchestration. This, of course, might be humanly monitored. But again, then this goes into your second part of your question. On the integration layer, yes, you might have more agentic automation as opposed to simply AI-powered search. Both are equally powerful, easier to implement, maybe the AI-powered search first. But again, if it's agentic SaaS or you're building anything for any company, if you're automating this whole workflow using Atlassian MCP only and you're really becoming good at that, I think it's a great business opportunity as well, because many companies at scale, they're spending hundreds, if not thousands of hours just basically feeding stuff into Atlassian products. And this is not ending into a code base, it's just ending into a document repository on Jira or Confluence. So there is just this notion on these two. Again, Excel, Atlassian, MCP. Do you, Ben, any other ones worth tackling?
For me, there's two more. I'll tackle both of them and then I'll pass to João to wrap it up with the golden key.
Of course.
So I trust in you, man. That laugh wasn't evil, I swear. So basically, the second one I present, I think it's a big one because I've been a big support of this. It's Twilio. I don't know if you guys know. Twilio is let's say, a platform for voice for phones. Probably I'm oversimplifying it. Sorry, Twilio. But basically, it's for you to connect your phones to an app or whatever. And this MCP will allow your AI to fully integrate this. So you can have a full integration, a voice integration with this, and it will be deciding what to do with Twilio.
It will make the AI call somebody, basically.
Yeah. No, not only call someone.
The next generation of spam calls are coming from Bene, sponsored by Twilio.
Exactly. I mean, they can do a lot more, but like the use case, I usually, Bene, go on.
For instance, the use case. Through chat, you say what you want to do. It connects to Twilio and spams people with the information. Or actually, for instance, to schedule things that I actually needed, not the spam calls that I've been getting, like, we received your CV, and then I just disconnect because I know it's spam. So we need to, probably before this kicks off, you need to re-educate people and to make sure your phone is official or whatsoever, so people are not disconnecting the call straight away. But this speeds up scheduling and doing everything. For instance, I met an entrepreneur 2 months ago, and basically he was spending so much money with people just to schedule appointments with customers. This was for electronics repair at home, for instance, oven, stove, etc., for warranty purposes. From an integration perspective, you can have everything. When you receive the email, LM will interpret it. It will connect to your Twilio MCP server and will schedule the call, the visit. Can you ask for more? Of course you can, but this is reality.
Pretty good.
It's maybe some other notion for Cloudflare, because that's what they're doing on the website, right? So this is like some of their core business is verifying if it's a non-bot user.
They do.
So
It's
basically,
all
if you just transport this notion into the AI phone call world, maybe they can offer, or anybody else in the audience can offer a service that to verify this is a non-bot or a bot. I think my iPhone, honestly, there is this yeah, sure. I was just gonna say that. Yeah, it doesn't work. My Apple, like my iPhone, just blocks like actually reasonable important stuff. So the other day, I got a call by like. Well, the university I'm engaged with, teaching different courses, and it was actually the dean calling me, and this like my iPhone was just like completely blocking the call as a scam. I was like, damn.
Oh,
It
iPhone
could be the case
AI.
that you get too many phone calls and they think you're the
Maybe,
scammer.
maybe
So
I'm
maybe
like
it was the dean's
flagged.
iPhone blocking. So you're calling a spammer. Better avoid it.
That's true. But yeah, it certainly again it as you pointed out, Ben, it just opens new opportunities again with new technology. I have one more just to briefly mention. This is just an example. It can be done with a different notion, but the notion of having an MCP server for CRM systems seems also a logical step for me. So many human individuals across an organization are usually interacting with a CRM. In this case, for example, the Odoo MCP server. It's just basically the layer to interact with a CRM system. So you might be able to search, retrieve particular records, update existing data in the database, take stuff out of a CRM, but in a standardized and structured way. There's secured access to maybe not the entire CRM like usually that is happening, and so on and so forth. So I think having an agent being able to interact with a CRM sounds maybe like a complicated endeavor, but if you have an MCP server in the middle as like a security layer / orchestration layer that you can then route carefully who can retrieve what from the CRM, that might also be a great let's say, I would say enabling MCP server.
Thank you.
Joao Benem,
Yeah,
any other thing to mention? Any
for
other
that
MCP?
segue, I do have, and then I'll pass to João.
Go ahead.
I think it integrates well with the CRM because normally CRM you're also scheduling to send invoices, to ask for payments, depending on what you're selling. And guess what? One of the most incredible players in the market for online payment, that normally when you go buy on a website and you see that brand, you say, I can trust this.
Man,
It's
that's
PayPal.
the past. I know what you're bringing, but I have a counter. Anyway, go on.
That might be the past, but so far it hasn't disappointed
Everybody in
me.
the world thinks you're talking about Stripe, but go on.
Okay, it might be,
I mean,
but
there are
for
two big players. Let's say that there's two
There are
big
two-
players,
okay,
and one of
nowadays there's
them
two-
is. Go ahead.
One
The
of them is
oldest
drum
player.
roll. Ben.
the oldest player in the market, PayPal.
Oh yeah.
So basically, PayPal, it's also official. They provided a MCP server, so you can integrate with your LLM to do plenty of API calls. For instance, generate an invoice, generate a payment option, and just do whatever you want with it, depending on your integration. And of course, you can say your counter. And after João finishes his tool, I have something to say as well.
My counter is
Yeah,
very simple. I think if PayPal is launching MCP, Stripe will, if not already, do the same, because it's just the default payment usually on
Let me check.
online. Yeah.
But Stripe before it was more in the States, not as much in Europe, no?
Yeah, I mean, we use Stripe as well, and I think it's just flying through. It's still a private company, not publicly listed. But I think it's certainly powering a lot of the fabric behind the scenes of online payment. Super simple to set up as well. So yeah, Joao, sorry for
Yeah, I was checking,
jumping
and
in.
the Stripe's valuation is a bit above PayPal's market cap. So
Yep.
they're comparable, but Stripe is certainly like a big player. But then again, if you don't work for either PayPal or Stripe, to you, there's just more options to have for your system and for you to integrate payments and make it easy for people and your clients to give you their money, which is a
And
great thing for businesses.
sorry to add, I was just searching. Stripe also has a MCP protocol server.
And is it official or is it community
Yes, official.
based?
Okay.
It's official. It's on the Stripe GitHub.
Okay.
Amazing.
That might be actually very interesting.
And so for I think a general tool, and I'll wrap this up in terms of tool listings, is using the browser. So we initially started and saying like these MCP servers or MCP tools are a way of AI to interact with your platforms and just avoid you going on the browser. And for each one of these platforms, PayPal, Reddit, or like any one of the platforms that we mentioned, have an MCP server already. And if not, they're about to have it. There's also one for the browser overall. So imagine if there's a website, that's a smaller website or smaller company that hasn't had MCP yet, or you haven't integrated or installed their MCP client yet, then you can have just a general use browser MCP tool to give your AI access to a browser. So you can not only access the web and search for things, but you can also go online, try to log in for you on some websites and try to navigate the website, whatever website that you're choosing, so you can get that data for you. Imagine that you're building a platform, you could very easily tell it, hey, go ahead on this platform and give me your opinion. And it could try to give you an opinion on the UI, on the colors, on how easy it is to navigate. It can try to compare it to another website, so another platform that your competitor has, and it can get that information for you. So using the browser is, I think, one of the most common things people do on their computers. And if you allow your AI to do that, then I think you have a whole range of possibilities and questions you can ask and value you can add to your business.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a great time maybe to wrap up also. I have like 1-2 more topics on the finance corner. So keep to bear that in mind. So I'll have some interesting notions there. Maybe just to wrap up though. So you might have different large language models orchestrated. So this is like the multi-agent system, but each of them is now also being capable of interacting with, for example, offline retrieval. So you have in-house databases that the AIs can go and get information from, read and write. Online retrieval, either as an MCP, as Joao just mentioned, or as a simple API call or via the browser directly, and or you then have extended tools. All these different LLMs can then be interacting from data analytics, like for example Excel, to many other analytics tools. We even Python, we haven't even delved into actually the coding MCP capability. So this is something maybe separate as well. And then multimodal generation of, for example, ads, for example, and then stuff like that. So we really covered a vast array of tooling to read stuff on the internet, to get information from the internet, to interact with certain applications like a CRM and Atlassian tool stack, and maybe in the future SAP and all the sales forces of the world. So these agents are really getting more and more embedded into the organizations, and instead of building an individual adapter to each of these software in-house, you would have this standardized tool, model context protocol, that you can basically interact with as a middle layer. Gentlemen, I have 2-3 knowledge bites just for the end prepared in a segment I call the Finance Corner. So I actually covered this company.
This is not investment advice.
This is not investment
opinion
advice.
by Cyril.
Exactly. No, I just read or actually listened to the Code 2 East meets West VC briefing this week. Was a super interesting conversation. I put it on the screen and in the comments and link below as well. They just basically highlighted 2 particular notions, which I thought is super interesting. So they have access to millions of credit card data, and also they have some great access to how companies spend money. So just on a high level, and they mapped basically that after a user is buying the OpenAI subscription, that the Google usage drops by 8% within 12 months. If they didn't do that, so they didn't subscribe to OpenAI, they would actually increase the Google usage by 4%. So this is a more or less just a ballpark estimate, but just a simple fact that they're pivoting away from Google. This gives Google a kind of loss of customer interaction by roughly 11 to 12%. So I thought this is highly interesting. Many people are saying this has no impact on the Google search. Some are pro, some are con, that Google is still around in 20 years. But this is just, I think, a great notion. Once they have a subscription to an OpenAI or maybe to a Claude and the Perplexity of the world, their Google search is dropping around 8, if not maybe 10% in the future. So I thought this is the first interesting part. And the second one, they also highlight that 40% of businesses already have an AI subscription. This is also, of course, a graph that's maybe going up in the future. There's more AI deployed, that's secure and let's say, non-hallucinating in the world now. So these businesses are really getting into the AI usage. So 40%, and before, again, this Google dropout. And then also the third one, and I covered that in my AI class this semester, actually. CoreWeave went public a few months ago, and it's also completely ripping in the market. Hashtag no financial advice. Hashtag you're already at 100 billion valuation soon anyway. But it's an AI infrastructure company, and it's again signaling a little bit that these hyperscalers like AWS, Google, and Azure that we talked multiple times on this channel are getting new competition, for example, from a CoreWeave and or from an Oracle and or Alibaba cloud and or whatever cloud there's coming in the future. But it's certainly one of the players I would keep an eye on. Now they're a little bit also ripping in the market, so they're already 3x almost after the IPO, but the new company is on the playing field, gentlemen. So that's my finance corner. Wrap up a few numbers. You know my enthusiasm on investing, so I had to wait a long time in today's episode. but this is it.
It is. Yeah.
Yeah. Any other notions today, guys? We talked about MCP. We talked about the utility of these servers and a little bit of a finance corner wrap up. Did I miss anything?
I mean, I think we covered it all. We covered personal cases and business cases. So it doesn't matter what you do professionally or what you plan to do professionally. There's bound to be an MCP server that's going to help you get there faster and or cheaper.
Or you can just build your whole company right now because you already have MCP servers to do almost everything and almost every integration. And if there isn't, it's on you to do it if you want to be rich.
Be rich. This is the year. Gentlemen, great point to wrap up of the This is the Year podcast from the AI wizard, João, about to be sent into the weekend, and also AI magician Bene to be sent into the weekend. Welcome back to the turf in Europe after your Brazil visit. And on myself, Cyril L, moderator. We see you in the next episode just in a few days. Like and subscribe. If you have a question, drop a comment, and see you in the next one. Bye-bye.
See you next week.